All right, let's fast forward now. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin arrived in Israel this morning, a first visit by a senior representative of the Biden administration. Austin was welcomed at Ben Gurion Airport by IDF Chief of Staff Aviv Kochavi and later arrived at the Defense Ministry headquarters, where he was welcomed by Defense Minister Benny Gantz. Austin is also due to meet with Netanyahu during the two-day visit, which officials said would include discussions of U.S. arms supplies to Israel. But the main topic on the agenda is Iran.
And we will work closely with our American allies to ensure that any new agreement with Iran will secure the vital interest of the world, of the United States, prevent dangerous arms race in our region, and protect the state of Israel.
As a major strategic partner for the United States, our bilateral relationship with Israel in particular is central to regional stability and security in the Middle East.
All right, let's see what we have to look forward to from Dr. Fadi Essmaeel, a research fellow at the International Institute for Counterterrorism at the IDC Herzliya. Thank you, sir, for joining me.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, although nothing concrete as of yet, it seems like Biden is looking to reintroduce diplomacy into U.S.-Iran ties and maybe re-enter the nuclear deal. Does Israel have any real influence on the U.S. in this regard? Can Gantz or Netanyahu possibly say anything to change the mind of the Secretary of Defense during this visit?
Of course. I mean, I don't know if to change the mind of the Secretary of Defense. In the end, it's the President Biden's decision. But sorry, but of course, the two nations have a wide array of shared interests and many areas in which they collaborate and can influence each other. I'm not sure that at this point it's going to be a question of whether or not to engage in a softer diplomacy vis-a-vis Iran, but rather in the details of it. President Biden has taken an approach that is different than that is of his predecessor, Mr. Trump. And this new approach brings with it many challenges that have to do with the many areas in which the Iranians are involved, many areas in terms of physical, geographical areas, as well as areas of activity, not only the nuclear deal. The nuclear deal is basically like the lightning rod that everything attracts to, but in fact, there's so many other issues that have to do with Iran's outreach all over the Middle East and even beyond the borders of the Middle East that have to do with modern military technologies that the Iranians are developing and stockpiling, and issues of terrorism and so on. So we have also to remember that there are other allies or countries of interest in the Middle East that are important to the U.S. There's a very sensitive situation in Iraq with the last week, some interesting exchanges between the government of Iraq, led by Prime Minister Kazemi, and the Iranian regime. There are issues that have to do with Saudi Arabia and its war in Yemen. There are other issues that have to do with Syria, Lebanon, and so on. So Israel is not the only issue. And I believe that the Iranians will play this game very masterfully. During the days of President Trump, he kind of made it simple in a way. He just decided to lay the law, throw the book at the Iranians, and basically put maximum pressure as much as possible on the Iranian regime. Anything short of that gives the Iranians, being very good merchants, gives them a very wide field of experimentation and maneuvering. And it will be very interesting to see how the current administration will operate vis-a-vis such very masterful negotiators. We don't know everything that's taking place. I want to believe that now the Israeli government is able to at least get some compensation in all kinds of ways if from the U.S. government, in case that indeed the Biden administration decide give Iran access to tens of billions of dollars, maybe even hundreds of billions. It could be $200 or $300 billion, which will change the picture of the Middle East. And if anybody wants to know how that looks like, just think 4 or 5 years back, and you will understand what it means. So I think, yes, of course, there are many leverages that Israeli leaders can use, many shared interests, and a lot of space for give and take. And in the end, we have to remember the very special relationship between these two countries that runs very deep to the level of the people.
Right.
I mean, it's a very, very deep. So I'm sure, I hope that some reasonable arrangement will be reached to.
Interesting. We'll have to wait and see how this special relationship evolves. Dr. Essmaeel, thank you so much for joining me.
For having me.